Welcome back, guys. Now we have speaker Karen Jean-Francois, and she's going to talk about how to effectively integrate data science into organizations. As an analytics manager, Karen is passionate about how data science and analytics can support businesses. While she finds digging into data is fun, experience taught her that it's only a small part of the job, and she believes that focusing on personal development and having access to role models is key to having a successful career. No matter what your definition of success is, this is why she created the thrivinganalyst.com and the Women in Data podcast in partnership with Women in Data UK. Karen, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello. So today, I guess you all know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to effectively integrate data science into an organization. So while data science has been around for a few years now, and it's a very exciting career path, it's a very exciting career journey, and there are researches that show that over the last 5 years, the number of job requests for people having some data science skills have tripled. Is the microphone? Yeah. There are still some problems that we're facing. The biggest one of them is successfully integrating data science into the organization. So while companies have been very, very data-centric, so they've been in the rush to become data-centric, integrate data science in their organizations, hire more data scientists, as I mentioned before. There are studies that show that only 10% of companies are seeing a significant impact from their data science and data analytics initiatives. And this is very problematic, both for organizations, but also for data science individuals. So how can we effectively integrate data science into an organization? This is what we're going to focus on today, as I mentioned, but this is a massive problem, and we're not going to solve it in 45 minutes. Unfortunately, I wish we could. What I think we're going to do today is we are going to focus on what we, so everyone in this room, can do to be able to make that better. So help data scientists, if you're a data scientist, help yourself, but also help your organization integrate data science better. Before I came here today, actually, that was a few months back, and I'm glad I asked this question. I asked on LinkedIn, what do you think is the task that performed by data scientists brings the most value to an organization? And overwhelmingly, people replied, understand and solve problems. I could not agree more with that. And also, Natalia Laskaya, who is the CDO at This Money, says exactly that on the Women in Data podcast when she talks about creating very strong data science team from scratch. But although we all agree that understanding and solving problems is where we can bring the most value, this is not really what we're doing. Very often what happens is that we're working in our corner, solving our problems, working on specific projects that we have, and we're not talking to the people in the organization to understand what problems they have to solve. So hopefully after today's talk, we're going to change this. So let's get to it. As I mentioned, we're not going to solve the whole problem today, and we're going to focus on what we can do. So I selected 3 different issues that I find common, and the first one is that data science resources are being misused. I'm sure that we will all feel the frustration on that. The second one is the imbalance that we observe between data scientist expectations and the business expectations. And the last one is projects that have a very strong potential that are being rushed. And that means that at the end of the day, very often, unfortunately, they are dropped. Before I keep going, I want to say a massive thank you to Harpreet from the Artists of Data Science podcast. I don't know if you know his podcast, but feel free to follow him. his podcast is great. He's great, and he's helped me take some of the stories I'm going to present today. So how today's talk is going to work is we'll have 6 stories to share with you. So 6 mini case studies of something that went wrong and how we can make it better. I don't want to be speaking for 45 minutes and you listening. So throughout the talk, I will ask you some questions. The question is always going to be the same. What do you think is wrong here? And hopefully you will help me with giving me 1 or 2 answers. There is no wrong answers. We're all here to learn. I don't have all the answers myself, so feel free to interact, and that will just make the learning experience better for everyone. All right, so first problem is data science resources being misused. This is an issue I've had from the very start of my career in data science, and I can tell you it is very frustrating. So first, let's look at Simon. Simon started working as an intern. So first job after university, he started working as an intern in a company that works in transportation and manufacturing. So how the company works, let's imagine, is there is a train that broke down and they want to fix the train. The question he has is, do we need to dismantle the train engines or not? And to do that, basically, what was happening before is there was someone going, do I need to dismantle the engine? Yes, no. And that person, based on their engineering experience, was dismantling the engine or not. And Simon was tasked to build a model that would outperform this decision. Ready? What do you think the issue is here? Yeah?
Well, it was a personal opinion and he worked with people.
All right. So the issue she mentioned is it was his personal opinion and he worked on his own. This is exactly it. So what was happening is that you had one person deciding if the engine had to be dismantled or not. And that meant that the data was biased. That meant that that person's opinion was everything. So all the data collected was coming from that person. So we didn't know that yes or no, the engine really needed to be dismantled or not. We just knew that that person said, let's dismantle the engine. And that meant that any model that Simon would have built would have been as good as what the previous employee did. And I mean, this brings some really tough ethical questions. So you're building a model to replace this guy who's been saying something, and your model is not better than him because it's based on his decision. What does that do to us? That's the first issue, and thank you for interacting. I think maybe the next one, if you could say your name, so at least we know who is talking. Yeah, thank you.
Should I mention my name?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Isaac.
Thank you. So the next story is Vicky's story. Vicky works in a company that sells ads. So there are loads of companies selling ads today. Data science is massive in that industry. What happened to Vicky is one day she walked into a meeting room and one stakeholder told her, oh my God, Vicky, I can see this trend where customer spend is up the roof versus the previous quarter. So it wasn't the previous quarter, it was the same quarter last year. But revenue is not growing. I need to understand why that is. And he said, can you please look into what products we've been selling to advertisers versus last year? And that's going to tell me if one product has been performing better than another and we should go and sell more of that product. What do you think the issue is here? Yeah?
Well, there are 2 issues here. Firstly, it's the fact that they are only considering one factor and not a range of other factors that could be playing a part. And secondly, even the fact they're considering, then there's no real basis for knowing whether that's even worth looking at to begin with.
And your name?
Zahid.
Zahid. Thank you. So exactly. So this summarizes the issues really well. So what happened is that there is one stakeholder who made an hypothesis. So that's what you said. There is just one idea of let's look into that. And there is no ground truth that this is what the problem is. What's going to happen, and I'm going to say what's going to happen, and please lift your hand. Let me know if you face that. So the stakeholder is going to come with a question, which is the question he said. Vicky is going to go, she's going to go in the data, pull the data. The stakeholder is not going to be happy with the data because it might not show what he wanted to show. He's going to come back to Vicky with another question. She's going to pull the data again. Then he's going to come back with another question. She's going to do it again, and it is never going to end. Has this happened to you before? Not that many people, I'm surprised. Are you lying to me, people? I mean, I want to work for your organization if that's not happening. So yeah, this is one of the biggest problems of misusing data scientist skills. Is someone comes with a question and they're like, I know what's happening here, just prove to me that I'm right. They're not asking the right question. So what you have to do here, and this is a very big problem we have, sorry, before I get into that, what Vicky did is she said, I'm not going to answer your question, I'm going to investigate the problem. Thank you, Vicky, this is the right approach. And what happened, what she said was, okay, so it's not that we want to know what product was performing better than another, is we want to know why the revenue is not following the same trend as the customer spend. This is the problem they had to solve. And why was that happening? Because they gave a discount to an advertiser. So it's not that they were selling more of a product versus another and there was one product performing better. It's just that someone got a discount, and that's why the revenue wasn't following. So Vicky would have spent quite a lot of time looking into that. So what I want, so make sure that you ask why and answer questions, and we're going to see that later. But how can we ensure that data science resources are not being misused? So the first one, and there are loads of things that you could do to take action on that, but the three main I found was spend time getting to know the data, clarify the problem you're trying to solve. So this is asking, what are you trying to do? And articulate clearly your skills and strengths to the company so that people will know what you're capable of. They're not going to tell you, I want you to play with Excel when your strength is with Python. So everybody needs to know what you do, what you're great at, and how you can support them. So make sure that you spend some time doing that. Now, second point is looking at the imbalance between the data scientist expectations and those of the business. This is a problem that we have, especially starting into data. We're all excited, we want to build models, doing cool stuff. I was like that. And then we join the business and we realize, oh, they're not that data literate. So we can't really build models yet. So we're going to try to balance that, right? First, before we do that, I will tell you a story and you tell me if you relate to that. So when I joined my first company out of university, I was working in France, and I was asked actually to build models. So they were using a rule-based algorithm and they wanted to move to a smarter model. So they wanted to do something similar to machine learning today, I guess, without it wasn't called machine learning at the time. And what happened is I spent loads of weeks working on that. I was super excited about it because I'm out of university, I am going to build models, this is great. And then when I presented the whole thing, what they said is, I prefer the rule-based algorithm because I know what the rules are and I can change them whenever I want. Has this happened to you? Yeah. I feel your frustration. This is very painful. It's a dream killer, isn't it? I mean, I moved to analytics after that. I was like, data science, bye. So we're going to talk about Sally. Sally worked in the data science teams that build products. A lot of us will be doing that because products is so big nowadays that this is where most companies are recruiting, I want to say. I didn't see the stats, so don't say I said that. So what Sally's team did is that they got really excited. They wanted to build a recommendation engine to I guess, give recommendations on purchases. So it would take people's behavior, past behaviors, and based on their past behavior, say, maybe you would be interested in this product and get people to buy it. However, the project was shelved because, well, there was no resource to implement it in the app. What do you think the problem is here? Yeah?
Just a second.
I think the issue here was that there was no knowledge on the data science side as to things like, for example, the budget that they had to spend and things like that. So as a result, they probably proposed stuff that would be over their budget, over the budget of the company.
Yeah, so that is one thing. There is someone behind that would like to say something as well.
I think the issue is here that the needs of the company haven't aligned with the want of the analyst or the data scientist.
Yeah, the other way around maybe, but yeah.
They're not aligning, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so what happened is that they worked on this project that is really great and could make a difference to the company, but it wasn't aligned with their priorities. So both of you were right. The needs were not aligned. So while the team worked on something that could have an impact, this was not at the top of the mind of the business at that moment. So budget was not allocated, resource was not allocated, and they worked on something that just couldn't be implemented. What they could do maybe is speak to people to understand what the business priorities were and work on something that the business would be able to put in front of their scene straight away. Tom's story. This is one that I like. Tom started in a company as their first data scientist. Oh my God, how exciting. There is no data science team. Tom is here. He's like, I'm going to do data science. I'm going to show them how things are done. And what the company wanted to do is they wanted to understand some insights. So they wanted to know what their customers were doing, who their customers were, and get all these 360 view of their customers. So Tom being Tom, he's like, I'm excited. I'm going to show them what data scientists are capable of. He's going to build a great Tableau dashboard. Problem is that there's one Tableau license, and the company is not data literate because they didn't have a data science team before. So no one used it because, well, they can't access Tableau anyways. So I did give a bit of an idea of the issue, but there is a bigger issue here. What do you think it is?
I think number one is about the tooling, making sure that the whole organization, they can get access to it. I think the second one is also about how the data scientists can understand, okay, like what sort of maturity the organization is about, like on data science, and tailor visualization or some sort of format that they can like consume.
Yeah.
Hi, Robbie. I'm definitely going to go down the data maturity standpoint as well, but I think Tom could have spent his time potentially, rather than just initially building a data dashboard, showing the use cases for data science so the business can align their interests more in what would enable, for example, more Tableau licenses by building some sort of business case to show uses.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. Data maturity is what the problem is here. Data maturity, data literacy, whatever you want to call it, that's what the problem is. Tom did not assess the level of data maturity or data literacy of the company. He was eager to showcase what was possible, which is great. If no one can use it, if no one understands why using this tool rather than another tool, it's all for nothing. So maybe an Excel spreadsheet would have been better in that case, or he would have had to spend some time pitching, why do we have to use Tableau? Why do we need more Tableau licenses? And then train people to use Tableau. So how do we ensure that data science and business expectations are aligned? The first one is one that we spoke about a lot. Talk to people. I know it's hard. I know we like to hide behind our screens, but speaking with people is extremely important. This is what how you're going to understand that their needs, their priorities, and this is how you're really going to be able to integrate data science into a business. The next one is ask yourself every time you start a project, and I mean every time you get excited about something, is this aligned with the business objectives? It's not always going to be aligned with the business objectives, but if you're going to spend weeks, months working on something, you want to make sure that there is going to be some appetite for it in the business. And the last one is the 80-20 rule. So, sometimes we like to build very fancy models. We like to use Tableau and do very nice stuff. It's not always necessary. Maybe sometimes you can do 20% of the effort of the cool thing that you want that's going to create 80% of the value. And that's where business is going to win money. That's where they're going to make money because, data science people, we're expensive. So the less time we spend working on something, it means that we can work on something else that's going to bring value to the business. So keep that in mind and don't go straight away. I'm not saying do not go for the fancy stuff that gets you excited, but make sure, look at, can I do this easier? Can I make it faster? And then when you have time for dev, maybe look at the smarter solution. Last round of stories. Data science projects, so projects with strong potentials that are being rushed. All right, Jane's story. So Jane's team, this is one that's really bad. I feel terrible for Jane. Jane's team was assigned a project that was to basically do some predictive analytics, so understand what next quarter will look like for the company. James' team didn't have any input on what the business was going to do, what the commercial team was going to do, and they built a model that scared everyone. So everyone's like, oh, these numbers are scary. And then when the prediction didn't happen, the whole team lost trust. So regaining trust is very, very difficult. What do you think the problem is? Yeah?
It's always lack of communication among the organization itself. They weren't informed about the plan for the next quarter, so they couldn't align, or their predictions were not aligned with the vision. Maybe they predicted right, or maybe their analysis was good, but the vision of the next quarter was different in the organization itself.
Yeah, it's a bit like the first story we had with Simon. Your models or your analysis is only as good as your data, isn't it? So what Jane's teams could have done is, so they basically went on, created a model, created an analysis without having all the information. So when you're building these kind of things that are very crucial for the business, to knowing how much money a business is going to be, this is what's important to them. They want to know. They want to, especially if it's a public company or something like that, they're going to be able to tell people this is how much we're going to do, and then if they're off that, well, people are going to have to answer some questions. So make sure that before we start a project, you have all the information you need, or as much information as you can get. Otherwise, if you lose trust, this could be very bad for yourself and for your team, and then regaining that is going to take a lot of legwork. Sam's story. That's a good one as well, and I'm very guilty of that. So Sam was working in a digital company, and there was a team that was very excited about doing some new things, understanding customers' engagement. Investigating data and customers' behavior is my favorite thing, understanding what people are doing and why. This is really exciting. So everybody was excited. This means that Sam got really excited too. And he started answering questions. So someone would come, ask him a question, he would answer the question, and then his to-do list kept growing and growing and growing. And it felt like the project was going nowhere. What's the issue here? Yeah?
So the issue here, what can come under the idea of a lack of organization, mainly two things. Number one, not being able to say no to requests. So all comes under, prioritization, communication, things like that. And also the idea that the vision seemed much too broad, like they didn't really know exactly what they wanted to solve.
Yeah. Someone else?
I guess just not having like clear scope really of like where your limitations are. So allowing yourself to have just, unlimited things that you'll do, not putting up like the barrier to say like, no, this is the scope of the work we're doing.
Yeah.
I guess just over-promising and under-delivering.
Yes. So he said under-promising and over-delivering. No, the other way around. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So there are a few strong words. So saying no, scope, over-promising. So that's linking to saying no as well. I mean, do we really know how to say no? This is a massive problem, not only in data, everywhere. I struggle with that, although I'm known as a no person in the team, but it's still very difficult. So what's the issue here is when you are in an organization where everyone gets excited about a problem, you get carried away. So you are excited yourself, you want to know, you want to answer questions, you want to feel like you're being helpful to other people. Because someone is asking a question, it does not mean that this is a question that needs to be answered. It doesn't mean that it's going to make a difference to the project, that it's going to add value. So scoping the project is very important. What I mean by scoping is that, first of all, you need to understand what is the question that you're trying to address here. Once you have that, what are you going to look at? And most importantly, what are you not going to look into? Do not forget that last part. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing work and work and work on the same project for months for no reason, because people are going to get tired of it, you're going to get tired of it, and you're going to say, they're wasting my time, I don't want to stay here, I'm changing company. So how do we ensure that projects are scoped out? And that means that projects are not rushed. So we're going to first make sure that you don't dig into your data straight away. As I said before, spend some time knowing your data. This is very important. Then make sure that you collect all the information necessary up front, so you will know all the variables or all the key information, all the business priorities before you jump into a project. And lastly, have a template. I love templates. They're easy. They mean that you don't forget to say, this is what I am not going to do, because it's written in your template. All right, so as I said, we're not going to solve the whole problem today, but we looked into how to effectively integrate data science into your organization. And we looked at, so the tips I'm giving you today is first, ensure that data science results are not being misused, that data science expectations and that of the business aligned, and also that projects are fully scoped out, especially if these are very long-running projects. I hope this gives you some answers, but if there is one thing that I want you to take out of this talk is from, not tomorrow because tomorrow is Sunday, from Monday, you have to ask, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Don't let people tell you, can I have this? Can I know this? Can you please help me with that? Ask them why, what. So this is me for today. Any questions? Thank you. Yeah, we have a question here.
I'll start with
Just a second.
for all you data science people, make friends with DevOps. Oh, you are handing the microphone out here. Because the people you talk to in the business will hide data, but nobody hides from DevOps. They know where all the bodies are buried, so make friends with them. And the question I was going to say, although I don't know whether anyone here's got an answer or whatever, I work at a business where we've only just started working with data science, and all of our data is transactional. So to give an example, we're about to start deleting client data when it's old, like when that client has left or whatever, or if it's a test case, we don't care. But in theory, someone is about to be able to hit a red button and say, we don't want to have their data anymore. And they were proposing to just delete all the data. And that's just because we've always thought, oh, it's just in time, it's real time. We're always working with data that's new. But in reports, obviously, what's going to happen, all of our past data is going to get screwed up by that. So if you've got an organisation that does stuff like that, how do you tell them to stop?
Well, okay. That's, so there are two things. First, regulations. So you need to be able, when it comes to data, especially transactional data, you need to be able to justify how much data you need to get. So what look back is necessary for your organization. Deleting data because someone just stopped spending can damage future predictive analytics because it means that you're losing past data. So I guess the first step is looking at how much data, so what look back do you need to keep? So being 2 years, 3 years, I don't think you would need 10 years depending on what you're doing. But saying, okay, let's not delete 2 years of data, and let's not delete the data from last week because someone stopped, but let's look at what's these stop points where we're saying, before that, we're not keeping the data. And making sure that you have a strong case of how you're going to use the data. Why do you need previous history data? And also have a flag saying that this customer is not spending anymore. So you can also include that in your analysis.
I would also say, sorry, I understand what's the motivation for wanting to get rid of the data. Is it because of cost? Sorry. I'm just saying that one of the key things would be to understand the motivation for wanting to get rid of the data. Is it because of cost? Is it because of regulation? Because of our different strategies you can use?
I'll boil it down. We've got a chap called Ian. He wants a big red button. So, he's getting a big red button.
I was, like maybe articulating the benefits of keeping it.
Yeah.
And understanding what use cases could come up in the future and how the business might move. And then going back to the motivations, other than Ian wanting his big red button. If you can see what are the motivations, you can come up with an appropriate retention strategy that will allow you to still get value, but mitigate some of the things like personal data or cost.
Yeah, I think if people don't know what you're going to do with the data, they're not going to want it. Storing data is expensive. Loads of questions.
Hiya. I just want to ask, I'm in my current role at the moment. It's like a hybrid role where one part I'm a trading analyst and another part I'm like data scientist. But it's funny enough, with how the markets are at the moment, there's so many queries, like you said, where people just come to you and say, oh, can you give me this data, whatever. But at the same time, you want to spend time learning things on how to develop models and give insights to the business. How do you articulate those times in the work? Because when you block in your calendar saying, oh, I want to have 1 hour for myself just to focus on developing models, and people come to you and say, oh, can I get the pricing list for today? And you can't really say no, but if you say no, and I'm only in my probation at the moment, so I don't want to get laid off. So, and the fact that my team is over capacity is it's only 4 people of us in the whole trading team, so people can't kind of rely on us, and I'm like the most junior. So if I try to say no when everyone else says yes, it just tells a lot like, oh, this guy is just trying to show his colours just when he starts doing his job. So I don't know how to articulate that kind of, how to set those boundaries without feeling like I'm trying to just be bossy or whatever.
Saying no is hard. You have to do it. So you have to know what you are going to say no to, right? So I would say very important to understand what it is that you can say no to, what is it that you cannot say no to, and what is it that maybe you get your manager to say no to. So there are different things. You being in your probation does not mean that you cannot say no, because how I see it, and this is my personal opinion, if you get sacked, it's not my fault, but this is how I would do it. For me, in the first few months you're in an organization, that sets the scene. People are going to say, for these few months, this is how this person was behaving, this is how he's going to behave for the rest of his employment with us. So if you go and say yes to everybody and then bam, end of probation, you start working and you start saying no, people are not going to be happy. So don't say no to everything, but at least set the expectations that you're not going to say yes to everything. And in terms of understanding how you can make space for building models for your personal development as well, I heard something about learning and all these things. Have your priority list. So know what it is that's important for the business, things that you have to do, what's important to you, things that you have to do to get to where you want to be. Cross that. And I mean, we work in data science. Sometimes we are alone in the role. Most of the times there is a manager. Talk to your manager. Get them to help you figure out what priorities, what can you say no to, and then someone will help you push back, especially if you're the most junior in the team. Because someone more senior is not pushing back, it doesn't mean that what they're doing is right. It just means that it's giving bad habits to people, and then you end up having to work long hours or not hitting your targets because you've been answering questions. Another thing is self-serve. So that's something you can learn as well. If you see that the questions that come on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis are always the same, just get them to get the answers themselves.
Yes, just like this, I'm required to be in the office because of the whole trading desk environment. Because of the nature of the job, I have to be in the office because of trading desk environment. I have to be in. So they expect like, oh, you're there, so you're supposed to reply to our queries ad hoc. And I'm not complaining. I love my job. It's just the nature of like, yeah, I love the nature of my job. I love that, but it's just, how do I say this without being condescending?
They're wasting your time. That's what you want to say.
Yeah, because I've got people coming up to me and say, oh, your role is not data scientist, you are just a trading analyst. But it's like, oh, well, you're trying to define my job for me when you don't have any idea. So it just, thank you for your answer. I think that really answered my question on how to set boundaries, but I'll probably work on.
Yeah, you might want a bit of job definitions around that if this is not the full scope, if people are not fully aware of it. But we can continue this conversation after. Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, so this question is more towards data teams in the wider organization. What are like, the key common problems behind like effective communication between data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, and how can we overcome that? I feel that's a big question to ask, but what's your opinion on that?
To overcome the communication problem?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say you just stand and talk to them, but now we're not always in the office. So for the way I create connection with other teams, and it's very difficult because you're not always working with them on the daily basis, it's first create relationship with the people. So if you start creating a good relationship with the people, I know in each team who I can go talk to, ask some questions, work with them, and then they're going to help me work with the others. So it's especially if you're in a big organization, that's very difficult, but make yourself known to people from the other teams, work with them, show what you can add value to, and then see what they can add value to your role as well. And we're all here to, I mean, at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, is to help the organization grow and help yourself grow as well, which is probably the most important one and the one we all want to do. But making sure that people know that you're here, you're available, and then that you can all rely on each other to get the work done is quite important.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing and all the questions, because, by the way, I'm Monique. As a non-data scientist, I think I start learning that I need to ask the right questions, so I'm not working my data scientist team to death. Just a question around the Simon story. So this is about having a data set with lots of biased data. So just coming from an angle of the business, would there be kind of any value to use the data to look into how biased it is, or should I just go start collecting unbiased data and build a model? I just wondered what could be done there.
Okay, so there are loads of questions around data quality of data and all that stuff. And I'm not a specialist in the area, so I won't have probably not the right answer. What I can say is when you want to know what data to collect, is start thinking about what you want to use it for today, but also tomorrow. Where do you think the business is going to go, and what you could do with data? And then go back from that. What kind of data do I want to collect? And if you're collecting, I don't believe there is any data set that does not have a bias. What's important is that you understand the bias and you try to, I guess, work around it, but at least know what it is to know your data. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for another hard question for you potentially. So I think it's all well and good that if we can plan in advance, sort of like apply the best practice, that would be ideal. But what if you join an organization, the data culture there is already toxic? The previous analysts kind of like, ruin the culture, do all the bad things that you said you shouldn't do. And everyone just kind of like, they kind of like, not uneducated in data, but rather miseducated in data. Is there sort of like a solution to turn that around?
Okay. So it's down to how much you value working in that organization. I am not saying leave the organization. When I joined my current organization, so I work at Cardlytics, I've been here 5 years and a half. There was a time where every day I was going to work having a coughing fit because the culture was not toxic, but it wasn't working for me. That was 4 years and a half ago. I'm still there. Things have changed. So if you want it hard enough, if you take the correct steps and you talk to the right people, you can change things. We're all here. We can all make change happen. It's down to how much effort you want to put in there. I knew there was good potential for Cardlytics to be a great company to work at. I said, life is really bad right now. I can see what it could look like. Let me hold on, try to change things, and things are absolutely different now. So it's not impossible. It might sound like a crazy task. If you don't value the company,
resilience. Hello. Yes, so some advice I've been given before about when I started an organization and I'm on the probation about not just meeting the expectations, but then also exceeding them. And I've been told that you can do that via either doing extra tasks that you haven't necessarily been told to do, or by doing something extra on a task you have been told to do. Now, based on that advice I've been given, do you have any further advice on, for example, how exactly you can go about doing that, or how you can decide, okay, what extra thing you want to work on, what extra thing to do, whilst also making sure that you meet the basics? Because that's something that, even though I'm not there yet, it's something I'd want to sort of keep in mind when I do eventually get there.
Yes, manager, don't do that to your employees. This is a very, very dangerous advice. I get it, they're working extra, going extra, do some extra things. But what that can lead to is the employees having to work longer hours, not being mindful of their well-being. So putting all the expectations of to progress, you need to do the extra thing is quite, I'm not saying don't do it, I've done it myself, but know where the limitations are and don't overwork people. And if you do extra things, make sure that they are extra things that are going to add value. So things that are going to make the team look good, things that are going to make your manager look good, and make yourself look good, but also the organization. Something I would do is become dependable. What I mean by that is someone who not asked me to do something, but a project I'm working on with someone, that someone knows that if I'm working on it, work is going to get done and work is going to get done well. This is what I mean by dependable. I am a step ahead, thinking about what's the next question they're going to ask me, so that when I go and present, they're going to ask me a question, I will already have an idea of that. I will have the data ready for them. And that means that people know that they can rely on me. This is what's most important in our role. People, most of the time in organizations, still struggle with data literacy. Although sometimes we'll have organizations that are very data literate, you're here to help them. So show them that they can rely on you when it comes to data. If you go and they ask you a question, or you're going to present some work and last minute you're telling them, oh, sorry, I'm going to have to need another week for that, but then they have their meeting tomorrow, this is not you being dependable. So make sure people know that they can count on you.
Thank you. So one of the questions I have, as I've recently started like 3 months into the role, is something new to me is like project requirements and project gathering. So as a team grows, I think there's struggling at some points for like what the right tooling is, like let's say Jira or some of the processes that are like documented. Do you have any advice or tips for like streamlining those processes?
So is that knowing what processes are running, or?
Just like project requirements and project gathering, so like how do you streamline them?
I'm not sure I understand your question, sorry. Did anyone else?
So like project gathering, so you gather a list of requirements from the stakeholders, and sometimes that might not be documented, sometimes that might be challenging for some people, like you were saying before, because most people are like focusing on code, whereas like part of the high level stuff is gathering the requirements for the project and understanding and scoping it out.
Yeah, so my understanding is that you have some projects that you're working on. There are people coming with project ideas and requirements, so what needed to be done, and you want to know how do you collect that, save it so that people can have access to it.
Yeah, just like any tips or advice.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have the answer to that question?
Well, I have an answer.
Yeah.
I'll wait for the microphone. We don't manage that in our data science department. We have, our project management is done under the banner of product. So our requirements are managed externally to the data science team. And that means that we agree to them and the stakeholder agrees to them and product holds us to them. And that means that I think it's a bad idea for data science to be in charge of their own requirements, because that's who's accountable then. So product in our case say, is it okay if we ask you to do that? And we say okay, and that's how the project gets put together.
I feel also like software engineers would know how to do that. So if you have any in your network, you can ask them. So
I was a software engineer.
Okay. There you go. I think.
Sorry, guys, we'll be taking one last question.
Yeah.
So we have time for the next speaker as well.
Hi, my name is Richard King. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm not a data scientist, so I perhaps like to offer up a slightly different view. I come back from a background of project management and change management, and I just wonder if this is a bigger conversation than just data science. Is it about people change? Is it about at the most senior levels having sponsorship there so people understand what data science can do? Is it about success stories that get presented and cascaded down the organization and creating awareness, desire and knowledge for people to use data science in the right way? So I'd be interested if you considered those as part of this, and it's more than just for data science to solve on their own.
Yeah, so absolutely. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is not a problem that we're going to solve in this room, and there are so many different aspects to it. So I focused today on what data scientists could do because this is what I know best. But definitely, as you know, we're getting more and more CDOs, CAOs, and all these things. Data literacy is going to grow within the organizations, and hopefully things are going to change. We're working in a very, it's not new, but it's new-ish and very changing quite rapidly field. So this is something that's going to take time, and people are going to get to it. It's just the technology moves faster than our brain. So it just requires some time for us to adapt. Before we go, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll take more questions. I'll be in the rooms. Follow me on the Women in Data podcast, on the Thriving Analyst as well, where I drop some tips. Women in Data podcast is a podcast where I interview some inspiring women in the field. We talk about everything, career advice, what it means to work in data. We talk about some technical stuff from time to time, but mainly how to own your career and through their experience. So yeah, you can find me there.